On behalf of the Digital Public Library of America, welcome everyone here to the webinar today. This is the first of our Wikipedia for Cultural Heritage webinar series from the Wikimedia Working Group. And just some housekeeping. This is a Zoom meeting, not a webinar. So there'll be time at the end for discussion. You can even go off mute and turn on your camera if you want at that time. And you can also feel free to use the chat for questions or comments throughout. We are recording today. You won't be on the recording if you stay in the chat. And I think that's about it. So without further ado, I want to introduce first, I'll hand the mic to Jamie Flood, who's a scholarly communication librarian at Butler University and also our Wikimedia Working Group chair, to introduce the speaker. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is the first in our series of learning how to work with Wikipedia workshops. Just so everyone knows, we do have 5 of them scheduled. Obviously, today is the first one, and they will take place on the second Thursday of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, or 5 p.m. UTC if you're from the wiki world and live around or know that time. Um, I am so pleased to have Mary Mark Ockerbloom with us today. Mary Mark has served previously as a Wikipedian resident at the Science History Institute. She's an organizer of the Philadelphia Wiki Salon, which is ongoing, and she's been editing Wikipedia since 2006. She recently put together a wonderful tool called the Wikipedia Workbook for cultural institutions. It's designed to help Wikipedians, Wikimedians in residence, and interested GLAM institutions to survey opportunities for engagement with Wikipedia and its related projects. It gives an overview of key projects, the ways in which they can and cannot be used, and where to find resources to learn more about using them. Both Wikipedians and GLAM professionals have specialized knowledge and skills, and this workbook attempts to introduce key concepts and information that will be useful to both groups and support more rewarding conversations and collaborations. I have been hawking this workbook everywhere I go because I think it's amazing. And I think one of the best parts about it is Mary Mark breaks everything down step by step. And so I feel like even if you've never thought about Wikipedia before, this workbook makes it very accessible and is a wonderful tool. And with that being said, I am going to pass it off to Mary Mark.
Thank you. As Jamie said, my name is Mary Mark Ockerbloom. I'm going to talk about how you can use the Wikipedia Workbook for cultural institutions. This was developed with support from Vizcaya Museum and Gardens in Miami, and it's freely downloadable from Wikimedia Commons at the shortened URL bit.ly/WSWbook. Also, the Philadelphia Wiki Salon has created some short 10 to 15 minute demos about some of the tasks that are involved in the workbook. And you can view those at the bit.ly for WS demos. And I just put those both in the chat. So next slide, please. Hello. Yep. Next slide. Thank you. So the workbook is based on my experience with Wikimedia platforms and cultural institutions. And I've worked as a Wikipedian in residence with both the Science History Institute in Philly and the Science Publisher Annual Reviews. I also co-host Philadelphia Wiki Salon, and I'm the editor of Celebration of Women Writers, which links to freely readable online books and information about women writers. Next slide. At the Science History Institute, I had the opportunity to work with staff from across the institution and released a wide variety of, and released Nope, back. There we go. I released a wide variety of information and images relating to library, museums, and archives collections, local events like the clear toy candy making from one of the local businesses that's shown there, and the work of researchers like the person who did the work on the FEMA trailers. So some of my favorites are shown on this slide. Now, if you're interested in connecting cultural institutions and assets with Wikipedia and related projects, next slide, please. The Wikipedia Workbook is a guidebook for planning your trip through Wikipedia and related projects. And like most guidebooks, it provides a set of starting points rather than extensive discussions of everything you might want to know. So you can go beyond this talk to the workbook, and you can go beyond the descriptions in the workbook to further resources and links that it lists. And I encourage you all to download a copy from the URL and explore it. Next slide, please. So both Wikipedians and GLAM professionals, as Jamie said, bring specialized knowledge and expertise to institutional partnerships. Wikipedians may be more familiar with platforms like Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and Wikidata, and cultural professionals may be more familiar with their institution's workflows, planning tools, and metrics. The workbook is intended to support conversations and increase the understanding of the perspective involved to make collaborations more effective. And today I'll start by giving you a sense of how the workbook is structured and how it can serve as a resource for finding out more about what you can do and how to do it. I'll introduce the major sections of the workbook, pointing out key issues that are of concern in each section, and these are discussed in more detail in the workbook. Then I'm going to walk you through a case study to illustrate some of the places you'll go when you share your institution's resources on Wikipedia and related projects. And this will introduce a number of the tools and activities that are discussed in the workbook. Next slide, please. Most people have some familiarity with Wikipedia articles through searching for information. But editing Wikipedia articles involves both technical and cultural issues. On Wikipedia, it's important for you to think like a knowledge sharer. You want to identify opportunities for positive engagement around your institutional content. It's really important that you focus on the shared mission of both cultural institutions and Wikipedia, which is making human knowledge more accessible in an accurate and unbiased way. Pitfalls that you need to understand and avoid include first, the potential for conflict of interest, which is referred to as COI, and second, the perception that you are being promotional. On Wikipedia, writing about yourself, your employer, or your own book, for example, a publication that you personally wrote, is considered a conflict of interest because you're really closely involved with that topic and might be biased. So rather than writing about your institution, what you need to do is write about the topics and resources that your institution provides. You never want to state, by the way, that your goal is to promote your institution. Promote is like one of the 10 worst words on Wikipedia. What you want to do is to share your institution's resources. And increasingly, editors need to be aware of and know how to deal with disinformation. Wikipedia's goal is to present accurate information reflecting the current consensus on a topic, or if there is no consensus, an appropriate balance of the opinions that exist. Next slide, please. Wikimedia Commons is where images are stored. These images can be used both on and beyond wiki projects. On Commons, you need to be aware of issues around copyright and licensing. And likely, if you're releasing images, you'll want to do some things to track any images that you release so that you can gather metrics. It's important to recognize that fair use is not an accepted justification for releasing an image on Wikimedia Commons. So if a Wikipedian asks you if they can use an image, be aware that they might not be asking the question that you're used to answering, which is often whether it can be used under fair use. To be released on Wikimedia Commons, images must be either in the public domain or released under a free license. And there's particular types of licenses that I won't go into here. To select an appropriate license template on Wikimedia Commons, you have to know both an image's copyright status and the justification for its status. For example, an image from the federal government might be in the public domain because of laws that make federal materials public domain materials. An image from a book published in the 1920s might be in the public domain because its original copyright term has expired. And an image from the 1940s in a magazine like Ebony might be in the public domain because its copyright was not renewed. All three would be in the public domain, but each one would need a different license when released on Wikimedia Commons. Next slide, please. Underlying both these projects is Wikidata, a data model used to describe the world in terms of entities and relationships. Wikidata connects to Wikipedia articles and Wikimedia Commons images. It is widely used beyond wiki projects, both by human researchers and by computer programs like Google. We need to remember that a model is only as good as the information it includes. And tools like the Wikidata query service, InteGraality, which I'll talk about a little today, and OpenRefine can be used to discover connections and gaps in our representation of the world. Next slide, please. Logic models and metrics are important for designing programs and obtaining funding for projects, and institutions need to demonstrate the impact and value of their work. Wikipedians aren't always as aware of this as an issue and why it matters. It's essential to discuss an institution's values and identify meaningful metrics right from the beginning of any project. It's likely that you will choose to use a combination of multiple topics and tools and metrics from both on and off wiki. Next slide. When you're working with an institution, it's important to understand the organization in terms of its structure and institutional workflows. And each institution will have its own workflows. Many different tools, scripts, and trainings may be part of an institution's workflows. So for a Wikipedian coming into an institution, you need to understand an organization's structure and identify key policies, decision makers, and gatekeepers. You also need to look for points of connection so that you can engage people with Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and Wikidata as part of their current work. For example, somebody who works with oral histories or finding aids might list them on Wikidata or Wikipedia as part of formally releasing them. Next slide. The final section of the workbook is a quick reference section. This lists URLs for the tools and training resources that are given throughout the workbook. Next, please. The full workbook is about 80 pages long, but you can easily select topics that interest you and your institution. Next, please. And each workbook topic gives an overview of key ideas you need to know about and starting points for deeper exploration, such as the identification of knowledge gaps. Next slide. Information about a workbook topic is often paired with a task, an activity for you and your cultural partner. For example, the page introducing Wikidata is paired with the activity of looking up your institution on Wikidata to see what Wikidata knows about it. Next slide. The workbook is organized so that you can select subsets of pages on specific topics like disinformation. Increasingly, we all need to be aware of disinformation and learn ways to detect and counter it. And the workbook contains 4 pages about this topic that could be used as a handout for an event. The pages discuss how disinformation works and presents tactics and writing techniques like balance of evidence and the truth sandwich, shown here. A truth sandwich, by the way, uses correct information as the bread to hold and control the messy misinformation filling that you're talking about. Next slide. Now that I've given you a quick introduction to the structure and use of the workbook, I want to show you some of the tools and activities it covers through a case study. The topic I'll use is the history of African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project. This is a particularly good topic for showing the potential reach of information and how it can travel as a result of engagement with wiki projects. This case is something that developed organically while I was working at the Science History Institute. Next slide. Thank you. It started with adding a citation to Wikipedia. In this case, I was citing an article about Lawrence J. Knox and his brother William Jacob Knox, African-American scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project. The Science History Institute had published an article about them in 2010 by Leon Gortler and Stefan Weininger, talking about chemical relations, William and Lawrence Knox, African-American chemists. When I cited this article on February 10th, 2015, I was resurfacing old content. And I hadn't written the Gortler article, it wasn't about me, and it wasn't about the Science History Institute, so there were no conflict of interest issues involved. Next slide, please. At that time, the Lawrence H. Knox article looked like this. Remember I mentioned that Lawrence Knox and his brother were both involved in the Manhattan Project? That's not mentioned here. In 2015, neither is Lawrence's brother. Also, the link in the reference is actually dead, which is how I ended up on the page to update it. I feel like I should also mention that an article like this, if it were created now instead of in 2012 when it originated, would last about 2 minutes on Wikipedia. It would be rejected probably as lacking both references and a clear demonstration of its notability or the importance of the topic. And over the next few years, not a lot changed about this article. Next slide, please. You may have noticed that the Wikipedia article didn't include an image of Lawrence Knox. And portraits of people are some of the most frequently used images on wiki projects, so I often look for them. In 2020, I came across a mention of an article in Ebony magazine about African Americans on the Manhattan Project. With the help of the wonderful librarians at the Science History Institute, I was able to find it. The article was Atom Scientists, 10 Negro scientists at Argonne Lab help in the race to harness atomic materials, in Ebony magazine of September 1949. The copyright of Ebony was not renewed, so the images were in the public domain. Very few serials bothered to renew copyrights, so there are many images from older serials that could be released on Wikimedia Commons. On June 10th, 2020, I was able to release 10 images of African American scientists on Wikimedia Commons from this article using the Upload Wizard tool. I later created a category on Wikimedia Commons for these images. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see the 10 images that I added in 2020. They show 3 women and 7 men actively working in laboratory settings. This increased the number of relevant scientists with available images in this group from 4 to 14. Over time, I began to see these images appear in many places beyond Wikimedia Commons, including news articles, blogs, and other websites. Next slide, please. In 2021, I decided to write a Wikipedia article for Black History Month. The result was African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project, and it was released on February 27th, 2021. Next slide, please. English Wikipedia featured the new article on its main page as a Did You Know, sometimes called a DYK, with the fact, did you know that the most senior of the African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project, William Knox, supervised the otherwise white staff of the corrosion section at Columbia University. And over about half a day, on April 7th, 2021, that new article was viewed 1,757 times. Next slide, please. The DYK also linked to an article for William Jacob Knox Jr., which had been created on September 2nd, 2020. And the William Jacob Knox Jr. article was part of something really exciting that had started to happen. That was that classes and students working with the Wiki Education Foundation had started to engage heavily with these resources. Wiki Education works with university classes, students, and others to improve Wikipedia. And as a result of their work, 14 new articles have been independently created and others improved as real-world writing assignments. In February 2021, 8 of the 27 known scientists had Wikipedia articles. By August 2025, 22 of 27 scientists had Wikipedia articles. And this is all work that was done independent of me. I did not initiate this, other than indirectly. I did not have direct contact with them and say something like, hey, would you like to use this stuff? They found it. So if you go to the next slide, for example, this article for Blanche Lawrence was created on September 19th, 2023 by a university student taking a class with Wiki Education assignments. Next slide. And as you can see, it's using the illustration that I had put up. So in addition to the articles and images, information was being added to Wikidata to describe and connect concepts and link Wikidata entities with Commons and Wikipedia. And this slide shows a little summary of some of the information and how it's connected. The category African American Scientists and Technicians on the Manhattan Project has what's called a Q number that's an entity on Wikidata. And it's defined as an instance of P31, a particular property, which is a Wikimedia category. Its main topic, P301, is the Wikidata entity, I'm not going to read the Q number, which represents the Wikipedia article African American Scientists and Technicians on the Manhattan Project. And the Wikidata entity also connects to the Commons category, P373, for Wikimedia Commons images, and has an English language link to the Wikipedia category for English language articles about scientists. In addition, each of the scientists and images has its own Wikidata item. Next slide, please. So we can look at Blanche Lawrence and see what Wikidata has been told about her. Wikidata contains a number of statements about her, each pairing a property, or PID, with a value in the right-hand column, or item identifier, a QID. Now, this is a summary slide that I put together because the Wikidata displays are very spread out. So I've just summarized this in a table. So we know that Blanche Lawrence is an instance of P31, a human, Q5. She has sex or gender, P21, female, Q number, educated at P69, Tuskegee University, which has a Q number, occupation, biochemist, employer, Argonne National Lab, ethnic group, African Americans, participant in Manhattan Project, and she has an image associated with her, which is the one that we put up. And that's a property called P18. Now, Blanche Lawrence also has Wikipedia articles in several languages, not just English. And because there's an image associated with her on Wikidata, that image can automatically be pulled into articles in other languages. Next slide. We can also examine the information that's represented across a set of items on Wikidata by using the Wikidata Query Service Builder. The Query Builder enables us to easily select statements in Wikidata and create a query. In this slide, you can see I've specified ethnic group P172 must have the value African Americans, Q49085. And I can easily add a condition for participant in P1344 Manhattan Project, Q127050. Next slide, please. The Query Builder writes a Sparkle query that, when run, will search for entities with these two statements being true, ethnic group African American and participant in Manhattan Project. Next slide, please. The Sparkle query returns a list of 27 Wikidata entities, which are based on the information that's been entered into Wikidata. Next slide, please. I don't show them all there because it's a long list and it would get even tinier. So we can explore Wikidata's property coverage even more deeply over the set of entities with a powerful planning tool like InteGraality. And I'm going to spend a little time on this because it's a fairly new tool and it's really worth getting to know and use. The workbook shows how you can set up an InteGraality tool for a dashboard in about 10 lines and with very simple changes. This example is different from the one that's in the workbook. And in this example, you can see I use something called I set something called the selector sparkle equals line using the same conditions that were just used in the Sparkle query, ethnic group, P172, and African American, Q49085, and participant in P1344, Manhattan Project, Q127050. I'm also using something called a grouping property, which I've determined to use sex or gender, which is P21. And I specify a list of other p-values for properties that I want to have displayed in my table of results. And you can go to the next slide, please. I'm just going to very quickly drop a bit.ly for this into the chat. So this InteGraality dashboard is online at the bit.ly I just showed. And this graphic shows the results for the dashboard as of August 26th, 2025. The table as a whole displays results for the 27 entities who we know are African Americans on the Manhattan Project. Each cell in the table indicates the percentage of these entities that have a value for that cell. For example, the cell for educated at, which is P69, shows that only 47% of male scientists and 33% of women scientists have at least one value to indicate an institution where they studied or obtained a degree. And this is a multi-valued property, so it's likely that an even smaller percentage of our data set contains complete coverage about this. We can immediately see from the shading gradient and the percentages shown that less information has been entered for women scientists, that center row, which is lighter colored in most of the cells, than has been entered for men, which is the top row. And the bottom row is the total of across the two groups. Now, if I were planning a Wikidata editing event or searching for images, I could use this table to give me highly useful information about the topics that have coverage and the topics that need work. Next slide, please. I can select any cell in the table and automatically generate a Sparkle query to identify the items that do or don't have values for a specific property. And this is an insanely huge time saver. If you've ever written Sparkle queries, InteGraality generates the queries for all of the things in that table, every single cell automatically. All you have to do is click. You don't have to write those queries. So if I wanted to review the completeness of the entries that have information for educated at P69, I would simply select all items with the property set and click on that. And if I wanted to see a list of the scientists that don't have any information about P69, I could I could select the option all items without the property set. Next slide, please. The resulting query will identify entities that don't have information, helping me to target slides that need further work. And I just have to click the little blue button there that says to make the query run, and then I would scroll down to see the results. So the next slide identifies 15 of our 27 scientists as missing educated at information in Wikidata. Now, lots of this information is already available. It's in the Wikipedia articles, it's in the references they cite, and it's in the references that are linked in Wikidata. So this dashboard can be used, because all of those things connect to each other through Wikidata, to find and add all of that relevant information to Wikidata. Next slide, please. If I have more complete information about where and when people study, I can generate another InteGraality dashboard sorted by educated at. I could select cells for image for specific schools and the option all items without the property set to see which people from that school need an image. And then I could use that as a very efficient way to identify specific schools whose yearbooks I could search for public domain images, because materials such as yearbooks are hardly ever copyright renewed. For example, the Tuskegee University is an institution that has released digital copies of its yearbooks and its digital archives. And I was able to find yearbook images for 2 of the scientists in this set based on that. Next slide. Images are of particular interest for cultural institutions because we have metrics for reporting image use and display. And institutions need to demonstrate the impact and value of their work. It's essential to start discussing an institution's values and identify metrics right from the beginning of a project. Before and after comparisons are often useful, but before may not be very easy to recreate. So it's important to plan in advance and track metrics as you go. Creating Wikimedia Commons categories can be important to group and track images. So for example, when I worked at Science History Institute, one of the things we realized was that portraits got a lot of attention. And we created one category that was just portraits from our institution to kind of see how that was comparing to all of the other things that we had online. And for metrics, you'll likely want to use a mixture of both wiki and off-wiki tools. Next slide, please. Tools like Glamorous and Glamorous 2 are used to report the use of images from Commons categories. You simply specify the Wikimedia Commons category name without putting category colon front, by the way, that will not work. And then you set a depth for the search so that in this case, I use a depth of 3 so that I get any images that are in subcategories. Next slide, please. Glamorous 2 displays several sets of results. Global file usage indicates how many times images are used on wiki projects. So for the category African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project, 21 images appear on Wikipedia pages 92 times across 20 different Wikipedias and Wikidata. Next slide. File usage details show which files are used most frequently and where. And the image for Carolyn Parker happens to be the most used. Adding an image like Carolyn Parker to Wikidata can have broad impact due to its display across multiple languages. I forget exactly how many languages she was in off the top of my head, but there were a bunch. I don't know why. I don't know why she's so gets so much attention, but she does. Next slide. And hopefully you can see the graph here fairly well. The daily views show how many times images are displayed to readers over a period of time. Now this graph shows image displays over a year-long period from about a year ago up until now. And images in the category African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project were shown 365,235 times last year, or about 1,000 times a day. We can also see some interesting things about when images are being viewed. There's a jagged up and down pattern between 5 and 2 days, suggesting that people tend to search during the week rather than on weekends. And we can also see that there's much higher access to this material during February, which is in this one just because of the way the year laid out, it's in the middle of the graph, suggesting that Black History Month is getting a lot of attention for this material. There are also a couple of relatively local peaks, which could be reflecting a did you know, or possibly an event such as an award, an anniversary, or possibly someone's death. Next slide, please. Uh-oh, that's not good. All right. Okay. Well, we're missing the image from that for some reason.
Let me see if I can open it somewhere else.
Are you looking at the PowerPoint or the PDF? See if you can open the PDF.
Yeah, let me open the PDF. Just a second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pause the screen share so I don't like make people
No, just go with that. And yeah, if you can bring it up, I'm going to talk about this slide for quite a while. So I'll just start saying what I would say, and eventually it'll catch up. So I'm a huge fan of logic models, and logic models enable you to plan a project and tell a story about your work that summarizes activities and results. Ideally, you would create a logic model at the beginning of a project. This case study was opportunistic rather than being planned, but a logic model is still really, really helpful for summarizing it. The first question I ask in creating a logic model is, what resources do I have? Now, some of these are tangible assets, such as museum, archival, and library collections materials. But there are other things that institutions don't always think about as assets, not just their collections materials, but publications, oral histories, blogs, finding aids, digital images, and event photographs. These are all things that are part of the history for the organization in some cases, and they don't always think of them as being assets, but they really are on Wikipedia. People in your institutions and communities are also assets, and knowing your community is highly important when you're planning. In this case, the Wiki Education Foundation was a community and a resource that I didn't initially realize I had when dealing with this material. The next question is what to do. Yay! So we just did column 1, the light blue, and now we're on to the second column. The next question is what to do. If I have resources, then I can use them to do an activity. In this case, my main activities were adding content to Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and Wikidata. But with earlier explicit planning, this work could have been coordinated with specific initiatives or events, like an exhibit or an editathon. I could have focused around these materials and reached out to my local community and tried to build community relationships. Third column, if I do an activity, then I will have tangible outputs. Tangible outputs in this case were as follows. There was one publication from the Institute which I cited. There were 12 new images released on Commons, 10 of which were from Ebony. There was one new article created by me on Wikipedia, which was the African American scientists and technicians on the Manhattan Project article. But there were 20 new Wikidata entities created by me. But there were also new, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. These are my tangible outputs. So yes, and I'm getting ahead of myself to the next step. I also created 2 categories on English Wikipedia and on Commons for articles and for images. Now, if I have tangible outputs, then I can measure outcomes, showing use or effect in my community. And this is where the results go beyond my personal activity. So for the DYK, the Did You Know on April 17th, 2021, I know that that was viewed 1,757 times. Wikipedia articles that were created not by me were an additional 14 articles. Scientists on Wikidata are now a total of 27. There were 7 before. I added 20. Scientists with image have gone from 4 to 16. And metrics show that 21 images are used 92 times in 20 languages in Wikidata. And those images are displayed
Mary froze for a second. I don't know if you froze for other people or if it's just me.
on all of the things that I've just said. The representation of African American scientists, both men and women, has increased. The availability and quality of the science information online has improved, both on and beyond wiki projects. And my institution is reaching a larger, global, more diverse audience, as we can see from all of the different languages that this material is going out to. Next slide, please. So this case study illustrates some of the many activities and resources that you can explore using the workbook. There's additional material described in the workbook and still more resources listed in the workbook for further exploration. Next slide, please. So thank you all for listening. I would like to thank DPLA for hosting this talk. I would like to thank everyone at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens for supporting development of the workbook. And I want to thank all of the enthusiastic people who've created wiki projects, tools, and trainings, and done the research that I reference throughout the workbook. All right. And if Jamie wants to feed me some questions from the chat, I'm happy to answer questions. Jamie, you're muted, I think.
Yeah, we don't have anything just yet, but someone wants a reshare of the workbook link, which I will get for you.
No problem.
We don't have any specific questions, but I just want to echo Stephanie's comment at the 36-minute mark when she said she was loving it. I will just say, and before I have a chance to forget, let me also say thank you to the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which supports DPLA's Wikimedia program. And related to that, I have kind of a meta question for you, which is just that I can see how much work went into this workbook. So I was wondering if you could, well, and first I want to say thank you. And I feel like congratulations is
Well,
appropriate
thank you.
too. Um,
It's a big achievement. It really is a big achievement.
so yeah, I just wondered if you could share a little bit more about how you went about making this, the effort required, and also how you
Sure.
like where the resources came from.
So this actually started, okay, stepping back even a step further. So the person who set up the job that I originally had at the Science History Institute was someone named Jeff Guin, who is now at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. And about, I'm going to just say several because I forget exactly which year this was. Several years ago, Jeff tagged me and he wanted to do a multi-day workshop at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens for organizations in the Miami area who might be interested in getting involved with GLAM and Wikipedia. And so he asked me to put together a workshop. And that ended up becoming the workbook. That was the workbook Mark 1. And it was not quite as extensive as it is now. But it was pretty similar. There were a couple of things that changed in version 2. He came back to me last year, 2024, and asked if I could do an updated version. Because of course, some of it, things change over time. And old links go bad and, it just needed a review. So basically, again, he funded the rewrite of the workbook. I expanded it, and I also made sure that absolutely every image in it was a public domain image so that it could be released on Commons as a CC BY 4.0 publication that other people could use and modify. And also expanded some of the sections, like, for example, the original version did not have a section on disinformation. This one has 4 pages on disinformation. The original workbook did not have a section on InteGraality, which is, like I said, it's a really new tool, like within the last year or two. In fact, it came out just before I finished redoing the workbook, and I was like, "Oh, this is so good! I have to add it." Love that tool. So that's kind of where that came from, and it's I mean, redoing it involved checking every image, checking every interface shot, checking every image. I said every image used, checking every link to every resource that was mentioned, making sure they were current. So yeah, it was a huge amount of work. I would not have done it without funding. We'll put it that way. Hopefully, if I do a version 3, it'll be a much quicker, easier, redo than going from version 1 to version 2. Because if I did a version 3, it would really be a matter of mostly just checking the links to make sure everything is up to date.
Mary, Stephanie asks, can you please go back and explain the difference between PID and QID?
So PIDs indicate a property, and you can think of that as kind of like an action in a way. And QIDs are a thing. So you can think of the PIDs as the relationship, and QIDs as the things that are involved in relationships. So, for example, when we say that Blanche Lawrence is a is a thing, is an item, an entity in Wikidata, um, and she has her own QID, and that enables us to distinguish her from anybody else who might be named Blanche Lawrence in the world ever. Um, then there are certain things that we know about her, and those are the properties, the PIDs. Those are the relationships. So, for example, one of the relationships is that Blanche Lawrence is a member of the group that is known as, that has an ethnicity African American, the group of people that are known by the term ethnicity as African Americans. So having that quality, being that thing, having an ethnicity, that's the property, the p value, and the particular value of that being African American as opposed to being Latina or Caucasian or whatever, that's the QID in that case.
Next question. In a nutshell, what's the difference, in parentheses, relative advantages of a Sparkle query and the newer tool? They didn't catch the name, but
In
it's with a double.
InteGraality?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the huge advantage of InteGraality is it just writes all these things for you. Like that table that I showed, let's see, that's, I think it's about what? Let's say it's, I think it's like maybe 7 or 8 properties wide, but let's say it was 10 properties wide, and then we don't have to think about the math much. It's got 3 rows, and let's say it had 10 properties displayed, which I easily could have done. That's 30 different Sparkle queries that program has just generated for me. And I don't have to, and not even that, it's there's 30 cells, and each of those cells has a does it have it and a does it not have it. So that's 30 times 2 is 60. And I can look at, so in 8-10 lines of code to set up that dashboard, I've now got 60 Sparkle queries that I can run just because I want to, without having to sit down and do that. So you still need to know enough to be able to identify the PIDs. You need to be able to write your initial Sparkle query to figure out, what properties and values you actually need to use to get your set of values. And there are some tricky things about the work. There's some tricky things about the table that I'm not quite sure how. There might be some really complex queries that you can't do. I haven't pushed it to its limits. But yeah, if it just makes life so much easier and it gives you just this huge flexibility. So you do sort of need to know enough about Sparkle to futz with it, but you can get there pretty fast if you use something like the query builder as a first step.
Cool. That question was from Deborah, and I want to share that they said, I'm convinced InteGraality is worth trying. I always have to ask for help formulating my Sparkle queries, though. I know what I'm comparing. Thanks.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
then,
I
oh,
would say
sorry.
try using the query builder as a first bootstrap step. And the workbook does give several, like I think it's about 4 pages that talks about how to set up an actual dashboard. One thing I want to mention about the dashboard too is it doesn't update dynamically, so you actually have to tell it to update all its values. So if you make a bunch of changes, you're not going to see the dashboard change immediately. You would have to reload it.
Great. That's a great tip, Mary Mark.
You'll get
Next
the changes in the Sparkle queries. You just won't see them in the dashboard display.
Next question. Having many years of experience as a Wikimedia in residence, what would you say are the most important things someone in GLAM should focus on if they wish to get buy-in from their institution for a Wikipedia/Wikimedia project?
In some ways, I would say this is really an issue of relationship building. And what you need to do, I had that slide about understanding workflows. And I talked about you want to know who the people are who are kind of the key decision makers and the gatekeepers in an institution. You need to have somebody who really kind of wants to go there. You need to you need to develop a relationship with somebody who both has the interest and the ability to try and make things happen. And at Science History Institute, that was originally Jeff Goodwin. And at Miami, that's been Jeff Goodwin too, who's done work there at Vizcaya. You've got to have somebody who really thinks it's cool and can talk to people and convince them that it's worth doing. If you've got that first key person, the next step is to actually do something that demonstrates effectiveness. The point where other people at that institution in different departments really started to come on board was when they started to see impact in their metrics. So for example, if I was citing articles from Distillations magazine, when they started seeing that the numbers of people, when they started looking at their Google metrics and seeing that Wikipedia was driving a whole bunch of people to their website that hadn't been going there before, that was an aha moment for people who went, oh, this is really a good thing we're doing here. When people in the archives and now they have a digital archive, but at the time that I first worked there, they didn't have one yet for releasing and managing information in a coordinated way. When people who were looking at images and image requests started seeing that a particular image that had been released suddenly had jumped hugely in terms of accesses and interest, that was an aha moment for them that was something they wanted to do more of. When oral history started seeing that all of a sudden there were certain people that were appearing on their list of who was getting downloaded in terms of, say, oral histories or finding aids. Again, once you can get something in there that demonstrates that there's a win for the materials, then you're likely to see people in those departments go, oh yeah, we want to talk to you more. We want to do more with you. But sometimes you have to, it really is about building relationships, and you kind of have to do it one by one, honestly, in a lot of cases. In some cases, if you've got somebody that really doesn't like the idea of releasing images or really doesn't like the idea of working with Wikipedia, you might have to wait until that institutional position changes, quite frankly. And there's another person there that is a gatekeeper that's willing to open the gate.
You're so right on that, Mary Mark. Speaking from personal experience. From Stephanie, my medium-sized public library has a local history wiki that I inherited. It grew from moving a vertical file of clippings and loose, uncatalogued local history items to a searchable database. It began in 2004. The entries are not in article style and need a whole revamping. The formatting is all over the place. Still, the database is quite valuable and we continue to grow it. Do you have advice for institutions like mine to refine and enhance local history resources like the one I'm describing? Maybe you'd have to see it. This could maybe be a longer conversation.
Well, in terms of how to redo your website, I don't think I can really speak to that. In terms of how to make your website more visible, I can absolutely speak to that. So if you, the first thing I would say is, for God's sake, use permanent URLs. Like it, whether you're moving a website or building a website, just have some kind of permalink there that is going to stay even if you change the website up. That is one of the most important things I tell people to do in terms of what their website looks like. The second thing I'm going to say, though, is if you've got really useful information in there about people, about events, about institutions, you can absolutely be linking those URLs to items in Wikidata. Even if this is that your thing is showing, a clipping under fair use on your website, you can be putting the URL that goes to that information into Wikidata as support for a statement on Wikidata. So if you have something like, so-and-so was married on such and such a date, and you've got the clipping for the wedding, or that was announced in the newspaper about it, you can absolutely be citing their wedding, citing that information in Wikidata. If you've got somebody's obituary and it gives their birth and death dates, you can absolutely be using that URL to cite something in Wikidata. You could maybe be using it in Wikipedia to cite information on Wikipedia as well, but I would start with Wikidata. It's just an easier lift all around.
Does anybody have any other questions? We have a couple minutes left. And Stephanie says thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for coming by. I'm happy that we've nailed the time window perfectly.
That was great, Mary Mark. Thank you so much for doing this. That was a great presentation, and I'm sorry for the malfunction. I haven't run slides from my MacBook before, and I didn't realize I couldn't use the mouse pad to go backwards.
Well, the other thing is, I think you had the PowerPoint first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have specified to use the PDF. I wasn't quite sure which would look better, and I actually suspected from early. Sometimes using the PDF just does things a little weirdly. It's
Yeah.
actually generally better to, or sometimes doing the PowerPoint will just do some little weird things with the displays. So I'm really glad to know that the PDF worked fine.
Yeah, I think the
Had them
PDF
both.
next time that was a
Just go with
good
the
tip.
PDFs next
Yeah,
time.
that was a good tip to go with the PDF.
Great.
All
Well,
right.
thanks everyone. I just want to give one last reminder that there's 4 more webinars in this series. They will be at this same time, the second Thursday of the month through January. So please, if you go to events.dp.la, I know you already found your way here, but you can register for the other events in the series. The next one, which will be in October, on October 9th, is entitled "I have thousands of items in Commons. What do I do now? Utilization opportunities on Wikimedia Commons." So we hope to see you there. And thanks so much to Mary.
And this is recorded, and I have begged Dominic to send out an email afterwards because I heard from a lot of people who couldn't make it today but want to watch the recording afterwards. So we will send out an email to all the registrants when the recording is ready.